Now we move on to our first panel discussion, which will cover both issues about how the pandemic has changed the world with a focus on women in the workplace and also inspiring future leaders. The panel will be moderated by Brian Henderson, the founder of Whole Business Wellness, and our panelists are Valderine Basto-Lick with Ingredion, Ruth C. with Schneider Electric, Julie Reneda with Schellenberg Whitmer, Shrikripa Srinivasan with Dell Global Analytics, and Jacqueline Chua from HP. Mr. Henderson, please begin your panel session now.
Many thanks, Mike, and thank you to all our wonderful panelists. So this is called the Successful Women Leaders Panel, and these women have some fantastic insights to share with us today on everything they've learned through their experience of the pandemic. I'm just going to start with a few little facts and figures, and then we'll let the panelists introduce themselves. So McKinsey found that 23% of women are considering leaving the workforce versus only 13% of men since COVID. They're finding that 55% of senior level women are feeling exhausted and burned out versus 41% of men. They find that 46% of women say their life has been disrupted by COVID, compared to only 35% of men. Female job loss rates are about 1.8 times higher than male job loss rates. And obviously some of the sectors in which women are predominantly employed have been most badly affected. So the statistics are really quite alarming, and we just wanted to dig into the experience of this group in terms of whether they've seen any of that, how that's affected them as leaders, how that's affected their organizations and the women that work in their teams. So I'll just give each of them the opportunity very briefly to introduce yourselves, about 1 minute each, if you could, please. And we're going to start with Valderine. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Valderine Bastos-Lick. I work for a company called Ingredion. It's a global company in the food ingredients segment. And I am a president of Asia Pacific business and a global head for the areas of pharmaceutical products and beauty and home products. Thank you.
Thank you, Valderine. Welcome. Then we go next is Ruth. Please.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruth Sia. In May this year, I celebrated 30 years in the workforce. My formative years of my career was with IBM, where I started technical as a system engineer. And then I discovered my talent is in sales and my passion is in motivating others. I then moved on to Microsoft and learned cloud and digital transformation there. 4 years ago, I switched from IT to OT, operating technology, and joined Schneider Electric. At Schneider Electric, I was the vice president for services in East Asia and Japan. And in February this year, I joined their global team, leading strategy and business development. Thank you for having me here today.
Wonderful. Welcome, Ruth. Thank you. Next up, Julie, please.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everybody. So my name is Julie Reneda. I'm a partner with Schellenberg Whitmer, one of the Swiss leading law firms and actually the only major Swiss firm with an office in Singapore and in the whole region. So I've worked in the past in Geneva, in Zurich, in London, and I've been based in Singapore for the past 5 years. My practice focuses on international arbitration, both commercial and investment. But, you know, aside from my practice, I'm also the liaison person in Singapore for any Swiss-related law advice on any matters in the region. And so I act as a link between our Swiss and Singapore offices.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. Welcome. Next up, Srikripa. Thank you.
Hey, hi, Brian. Thanks for having me here. Hi, wonderful to be there with these wonderful ladies. So my name is Srikripa. People normally call me Kripa because it's easier that way. I am the vice president for Dell Global Analytics. Been doing this job for 3 years now, based in Bangalore. Like Ruth, I've also got a lot of years behind me, and I started off as a finance professional. I'm a CPA equivalent or a chartered accountant in India. been with a bunch of multinationals, common to a few of you out here. PricewaterhouseCoopers, Microsoft, GE, some of the names before I got into EMC, which got acquired by Dell. From my perspective, my job over here is that I have a team of wonderful AI and ML and data science and advanced analytics professionals. So we solve a bunch of problems which or a bunch of data and data-related insights which we make our company, I believe, look more intelligent and make better decisions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kripa. And finally, Jacqueline.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, I'm Jacqueline Chua. Currently, I head HP Inc.'s Print Microfluidics Technology and Operations, R&D, and New Products Introduction organization in Singapore, where we develop strategies, technology roadmaps, and build capabilities to bring new products to markets, particularly HP's print supplies. I started my career at HP as an engineer, and over the past 25 years, I've had the opportunity to take on several different technicals and leadership roles across sales, technical marketing, quality, R&D, and NPI. I've been fortunate to be able to play a part in developing and growing the R&D footprint in Singapore. Today, we have both ink and laser printed products and ink supplies that are developed locally here for the global market. Currently, I'm also a member of Singapore's Nanyang Technological University's College of Engineering Advisory Board to provide external input to the college strategic direction and development of new initiatives to achieve academic excellence. Definitely very happy to be part of the board today and look forward to our discussion. Back to you, Brian.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jack. All right, so fantastic. We've heard from all our panelists. So now it's your turn. So we do have a quick poll. We wanted just to see whether the experience of our audience today in any way reflects the facts and figures that I quoted from the research a few moments ago. So I can't see the poll on my screen, but I hope you can see it on yours. The questions are, to what extent has your life been disrupted by COVID? Extremely, very, somewhat, not much, or not at all. Second question, have you considered leaving the workforce due to increased demands resulting from COVID? Yes or no? And the final question, to what extent do you feel burned out? Extremely, very, somewhat, not really, or not at all? So I'll just give you a moment to reflect on those questions and input your answers. And if you just keep an eye on your own screen on the right-hand side, you will see the results come up. I probably can't see the results. They don't seem to be on my screen at the moment. But let's just jump straight into the panel. So the facts that we quoted at the beginning are really quite shocking. So perhaps the panelists could each in turn share your personal experience of the pandemic. How has it affected you, and how have you managed your own resilience to avoid burnout? So we focus just on you to start with, and we'll get on to your teams and how you've managed your organization as a supplementary. So maybe we just go in the same order as we started with the intros. So Valdirene, start with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. So I think as a company, there are, as a leader, there are a lot of things that we can do to support and to avoid burnout, or to provide some support to the employees at this time. So I will start first with some things that their own employees can do. They can, of course, organize their own agenda. So if you book your agenda without any intervals to one meeting to another, you can easily be very and extremely busy with your day and have long hours of work, since we don't have our limits on how much time we can work. So I would say let's start with ourselves. Try to have the discipline to put a short interval between meetings, so you can stand up, take a coffee, have a short break, talk to someone around. The second, I would say, as leaders, what we can do to improve this environment or this situation is frequent communication. If you as a leader communicated before with your teams, you need to double or triple the amount of communication you do now. Share results, share the challenge, the opportunities, the progress you are doing in your business, to make sure people feel engaged, even if they are working remotely, is a way that you can make people feel part still of the company and part of the common goals that we have. The third area, I would say, we also needed to communicate on one-to-one. So as a leader, pick the phone, call your team members, ask how they are performing, how they are feeling about their stress level, how they are feeling about the workload. Sometimes these chats can help you to identify any signals of burnout and act on that. So this is a bit what we have been doing, and maybe a short list of actions that as a company we are doing as well is we established once a month Friday free of meetings. So we have a calendar until the end of the year. There is one Friday that no one in the company book meetings. It's a day that people can work for catch up, emails, think ahead. So it helps to release a bit the stress. Another thing that we did, we put a psychological program available for employees to use if they feel stressed. We also provided for the Singaporean team, since they were working from home, we gave one-time cash for the employees to utilize this money to upgrade some of the equipment they have at home. Sometimes they don't have the right table, the right chair, the right screen. So this helps them to have a better setup at home. And last point I want to make is vaccination program is extremely important. So we know that especially in Asia Pacific, there are countries struggling with vaccination programs. So we made a search in each country in Asia Pacific where there are private vaccination programs for employees, where the companies can buy the vaccines. So we engaged in this program in Thailand, Indonesia, in Japan, in Philippines, and we are making sure that this helps to decrease a bit the anxiety of our teams in the countries where the vaccine is not accessible. So I'm giving you some examples, but please, I think my colleagues or others of you can also step in. My main message is there are lots we can do as leaders. There are lots we can do to support individuals, to support the collective stress, and to support engaging the team and decrease their level of stress during this pandemic time. Don't ever believe you can't do anything. You can do a lot as a leader.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Valder.
I'll just add to what Valder says. I think I agree with her completely. I'll make it brief. I think from our perspective, we've all gone through these ups and downs. We think that we're going to open up tomorrow, and then suddenly something happens. We thought US was opening up. Suddenly something happened. The yo-yos are happening. What we've got, and including me, I think we've had a lot of mess up in our head, and we've figured out different methods of making peace in our head and being sorted out. One of the things that I think you called out, which really helped us at Dell, is that we have a third-party agency that we have worked with for reaching out to anything, any kind of counseling that you want, any kind of discussions that you want, what you were doing about it. That has really helped us. And shortly after the crisis India went through in April and May, we actually had a hospital, psychologist team come and talk to people about trauma and grief care, and we found the uptake on that very well. I'll make it brief, Brian, and hand it back to you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, both of you. Yes, I mean, I think what Valerie was saying around taking breaks very much resonated with what Sven was saying earlier, the difference between the athletes who build in the recovery time and the corporate warriors who probably don't do that quite so effectively. So fantastic suggestion. But Ruth, maybe from your, more from, before we get into the corporate side, maybe just hear from your personal perspective as an individual. What did you experience? How did it affect you? And what were you able to do to maintain your own personal resilience?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I have a very unusual experience because I became one of the earliest COVID positive cases in Singapore. My case number is number 348. My journey started 18 March last year. It lasted 23 days. I was in jail 23 days. In fact, all my 7 family members who live in the same house contracted the virus. You can't imagine the roller coaster ride we have as a family. At one point, we even asked the doctors to swab our dogs because we were suspecting that he was probably the super spreader. Long story short, my family all now have a clean bill of health. In fact, we came out of it stronger individually as well as tightly bonded. I just want to share and reflect some of my learnings here. As Dr. Henson said earlier, I found that going through crisis as a woman, I have this amazing strength and resilience. Remember, this hit me last March when little was known about the virus. So the emotional and the mental stress of being a COVID patient was even worse than the physical effects. No matter how tough and discouraging the situation was, I found myself persevering, holding it together and keeping sane. Let me give you a few examples of how I coped with this crisis. I was forward thinking. This involves reading the deeper signs as to emotions, your emotions, keeping calm when you're confronted with a challenge. I have this very interesting habit of using 3 important parts of my body at the same time. My head, my heart, and my hands. As a relatively good multitasker, I will use my head to do a lot of the thinking, my heart to do a lot of the feeling, and then I will kick in my hands to take the right action. I feel like I was the mother hen, just ensuring the safety of everyone I was in charge of. And I try to anticipate all possible scenarios and just plan 2 steps ahead, During the crisis, I also found that I kept a lot of my feelings to myself so as not to burden my husband and children. I found like I have this secret strength or secret hope that's very hard to explain to you, but it kept me going. And it was really this ability to channel and redirect my energies to not just doing, but also being. And my being involves a few areas. First is the spiritual part. I reconnected with my faith in God. This was a very good time that I draw this supernatural strength. I reflected a lot on life and death. I found the purpose of my life. The mental and physical health was also something I focused a lot on. In fact, I enjoy journaling a lot. Just now, Dr. Henson also talked about journaling. I now have a OneNote that I compile that has all my 52 days journey with the family. I collected and organized a lot of information. I received a lot of encouragement from people. So I decided to collect all the songs I have into a Spotify playlist. I collected about 72 scripture verses that people gave to me over WhatsApp. I have a cleaning, packing list. If you ever, I hope, touch wood, need any help, just reach out to me. I now exercise my diet, exercise and watch my diet a lot. And finally, I just want to encourage you to choose your attitude, and that's exactly what I did. My family and I went on a vacation, a staycation last December in Singapore. We had a silent retreat, and out of this solitude and family time, we decided that the 2021 theme that we were going to adopt as a family was these 3 words: live for others. And that's exactly what we've been doing. So we made a choice to be overcomers in this pandemic. Thank you. Over to you, Brian.
What an absolutely amazing story, Ruth. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure the number of people out there will be very interested in the idea of a silent family retreat. I cannot begin to imagine that, but it sounds like a wonderful idea. So maybe just sticking with the family theme, Jacqueline, just to come to you. So I think actually everybody on this panel has children, as do I. But Jacqueline, how did the working from home and the lockdown for you, how did that affect your children, and how did your concerns or whatever you had to do to help support your children, how did that affect you as a leader?
Yeah, as a working parent to three daughters, the pandemic has definitely affected us, right? Especially during the peak of the pandemic, where schools were shut down and where all office workers were working from home. However, in Singapore, we were actually very fortunate because majority of the schools in Singapore has already started using blended learning as well as technology in the classrooms for the past few years. So when that transition of going to fully in-class learnings to a hybrid home and school, that transition was actually a lot easier. Most children has their own notebook. They were able to have online classes more easily. I'm sure many other countries in Asia may not have the benefit of this situation. As my children are older, they are relatively independent learners, so I do not face as many challenges as some of my staff did who have younger children, right? Where they need to balance making sure that their children's schoolwork is being kept on track while learning from home, and at the same time still trying to make sure that their commitments to work remains on track, right? And this is where HP as a company has always been very, very supportive of supporting female working mothers as well as working parents as well, in terms of providing flexible working arrangements, as well as providing the necessary support needed in this current situation, right? As an example, we actually roll out a program, what we call as HP Spirit, last year at the middle of the pandemic, where we actually provide innovation solutions to of various kind to all the our employees, where they could, for example, use in-house doctors, virtual in-house doctors. We even have organized gym classes for kids of all ages. We also provide what we call home teachers to help with homework, what we call homework clubs. This is to really alleviate some of the stress of working parents who are trying to balance meeting the commitment at work, at the same time keeping their children engaged. So these are just some of the things that for us as an organization, what we have put in place to try to support our employees through this period.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Yeah, I love the idea of gym for kids and homework help for kids. Those are, two very demanding things for any working parent to cope with at home. So it's fantastic to hear about that. Julie, just coming to you then, whether you have any personal experiences through COVID to share, or anything you've been doing in the workplace to support your colleagues.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Brian. So I have two young kids, 2 and 4 years old. So we were really, really far from family silent retreats. The noise level during, the peak of the pandemic was something I had, it was difficult for me to cope with because they just never stop. But I also realized, being in Singapore, I was very fortunate because I had a helper at home who could really help me and my husband, who were both working full time, to look after the kids while we were sleeping. And when I was, comparing myself to my colleagues in Switzerland, for instance, they were, struggling on a complete different level. There was no school, no helper, no help whatsoever. And so to, deliver the work, basically they were working during the nights when the kids were sleeping. And so I really, really admire their resilience and ability to, to stay motivated and to do the work. I mean, it was obviously a challenging period, and it still is, because more than a year and a half after, we still, in this COVID new life. And this is, I think, tiring for everybody, mentally. But things have evolved and are looking in the right direction now. But I think out of all these challenges, I also, personally find positive sides in this period. I mean, I also learned to enjoy being at home. I brought, it brought different benefits. I rediscovered old passion, discovered new ones, and most importantly, I spent, so much more time with my kids than I would ever have done in the past, and is something I come to realize that is so precious. Now, as a leader myself, one thing that I found challenging during the pandemic was to keep the team motivated, because we all had our share of worries, issues, sad stories, but you want to appear strong in front of your team because you have to make sure that the work is done for the clients. We need to deliver the work. This is what we do. So finding the right balance between, wanting to deliver the highest quality of work as we always do, and at the same time, caring for your team, your people, and making sure they are fine and knowing what they're going through, I think it was not always easy to find the right balance there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. Yes, I mean, a number of issues in there. I think that's, there's feelings of exhaustion that you mentioned, and the fact that people are having to work when their kids are asleep, and that could be at all sorts of strange hours of day and night. Really very exhausting. I'd like to come back to that one, Ruth, in a moment with you. And I think some of the other things you said, like finding new passions and just accepting that you're going to be at home for a while, also really important for mental health to be able to do that. And as you said, to find the balance between motivation and keeping people going and looking after their well-being and delivering quality service to clients. Super challenging. So congrats on managing all of that. But Ruth, just to come back to that whole issue around people feeling exhausted, feeling like it's all too much, maybe they don't have this positive mindset, they kind of fallen into a bit of I just can't keep going, it's just too exhausting. Maybe it's time I quit my job or downscaled my job or took a few days less a week or whatever. So I think the research shows that a lot of women have either done that or they're considering it. So Ruth, to come to you, what do you think we can do as leaders and as organizations to ensure that we retain the female talent in our pipeline and support them through all of those challenges that they currently face?
Thanks, Brian. So I take that one, and I totally resonate what all the speakers have spoken so far, and I really admire all the stories in terms of how Europe dealt with this, and there is still journey on that. So all the best, and I'm sure we'll continue to deliver. The pandemic has now got phases. It's like the phase 1 of the war and the phase 2 of the war and things like that. So we've dealt with the war in different ways. When we started off last year, we thought we were really doing a good job in the organization. We educated people on home, on how to take care of themselves. This is a office space that I've done for myself. Everybody does that. Everyone doesn't have that kind of space at home back in India, and so there is husband, wife, children, all of them in one room possibly. And Judy spoke of noise, but the noise here is for a different reason. There is class going on, there is call going on, so there is those kind of things that you were dealing with right at the beginning. It was very chaotic. And then we had these noiseless headsets which we got for people. We gave them the big monitors. Some houses couldn't take those big monitors, and we don't understand how privileged we are that we are able to put these things out for some of us. Last year was a lot of that. And it was a new adventure in some sense to go through. Back here, we organized a lot of fun activities, saying let's take a pause and let's do some music, and let's the music, even if it is imperfect, because there's going to be those internet redundancies, so you're never going to sound okay. What is just a break? We did some yoga sessions, we did some chess tournaments. I had an analytics group, so all of that was what we were doing. But back, I think what I think a couple of you mentioned, Jacqueline and Julie mentioned, is that back at home, the one person's life what dramatically changed was the woman. Because in the lockdown, all of you know how India is. You have a lot of helpers who come home and sort of take care of a lot of support systems. None of them were coming. So the entire home front was entirely on in this the woman of the house. But I must give it saying that a lot of stories that I've heard is that the spouses have really come and become the family man in a lot of ways, because they are sort of helping a lot. But yet the cooking and early days, what would happen? I mean, when we were going back to work, it sounds like some ancient story. When you would go to work, you would cook and leave it saying it's in casseroles, it's in boxes, people are taking their stuff and going. Now you're getting hot food. I mean, I will take time off now and go and heat up the food because everybody's going to be on the dining table. It's good fun. You're seeing family. My teenage daughters are discussing, making me feel like campus hires all the time. That's all good. But the fact that I have to figure out that half an hour to go and heat up stuff and do some stuff, all of that is additional time in an already busy day. Now, my boss back in the US is also not having children going to school. So the mornings are busy, the nights are busy, the afternoons are busy. You take out these, I think Valerie mentioned, well, take out those small pieces of slots where you can say it's me time, all right? So, do that kind of a thing. That was last year, Brian. So I think there was, joint families is still a popular thing in India. So you had the woman who had her in-laws and everybody also who now have the daughter-in-law at home. So the food has to be sort of fresh and cooked and stuff like that, and in-laws are very helpful for sure in a lot of cases, but there is that extra piece which you didn't have time for even before. So going back to that phase of how women were balancing themselves as it is, having no me time was one piece. We were actually sort of sharing notes saying how are you doing, and educating a lot of men and others saying that, do you really need a 5-course meal every day? Can't we sort of make it simple? It's a working day kind of thing. And still take time out was what we were doing last year. This year has been devastating in that sense because all of that was out of the window. Because April, every household had, like Ruth mentioned, the emotional trauma this puts you through. Every household was going through that scenario, and you had to help each other in a very different way. The emotional drain is still felt. Touch wood, I don't have a COVID in my family or my extended family, but I have very close friends who, 30 years of working in a country, you think you have the network to organize things. Beds couldn't be organized, ICUs couldn't be organized, ventilators couldn't be organized. You were devastated in your head, saying that you're losing near and dear ones. That trauma is a very different trauma, which I think men, women, children, everybody went through. Now you're coming out of trauma after trauma. You're going to sit back and say, why am I doing all this? So it's time to give up. So that extra help at this time, saying that, how do you, I think you spoke about spirituality. I personally, I am religious, but I've become more spiritual in this last, in this last few months, saying, somebody's going through something. How can I be there for them? The fact is it's not a perfect world. It's okay. Let your guard down. It's okay if one day the house is not cleaned up. It's okay if my food is not exactly the best in class one day. And I think that's what we're going through right now. What we've done is, Brian, we've stepped up a target to ourselves in the company, saying that we are going to, if any open position is there, first we're going out and seeing if I can fill it with women. And unless I've sort of gone through that journey for 2 weeks, saying that I'm not able to find a diversity I don't like that word, but as long as I'm able to find a woman candidate, I'm going to hire them first. Second, this whole thing, when I started work, we didn't have even a mobile phone or a computer in our office. The flexibility has now become a big curse because, I'm contactable all the time. And I think Julie and Jacqueline and Ruth and all of them mentioned saying, how do you take time zones out? So we've actually encouraged exactly what Valerie said on Friday. We've just about begun that, saying, can I not at least do avoidable meetings on Friday? Can I make it a lighter day? And things. So that is one thing which we are enforcing across teams. Either my night or my morning, can I just have it a little light, so that I don't burn candles both sides. We've proven over and over again diversity and, having diversity in the workforce, the results are much better. So we can't give it up. So how do we make it easy and make it happen is something that we are educating ourselves as well as the teams on. Speak up if you're in any kind of situation. How can we ease it out for you? My child is suppose my child is 3 years old and I have an online class and the child can't be without me. Fine, I'm going to schedule your meetings the later part of the day. There are very few where you need it right there, then, unless it's a end of quarter sales kind of a scenario. A lot of flexibilities in that sales zone is what we're doing. We've mandated saying that we are going to get to a workforce of 30% of women, or 40% of women, and 50% of women as far as our roadmap is concerned. I'm very serious about it. But that is not going to happen overnight. So there's a whole plan saying, should we go to tier 2, tier 3 cities where there's so many women out there who don't even know how to contact companies like ours and try and help them sort of channelize a career path for them. So number one, you got to take care of the woman. Number two, educate the woman to take care of herself. Number three, give opportunities to, so now it's online, I can have a factory sort of a supervisor being sitting out of workplace. So be open about what can be done in a hybrid environment. And number four, open your horizons, because there's just a lot of women out there who are willing to come and do work for you and make your organization better. That's what we are doing, Brian.
Well, thank you. Yes, I mean, I love that. I love that. Particularly what I took away from that was the need to really understand each individual's circumstances and to be able to provide them the support, like whether the screen is too big for their flat or whether they have in-laws living with them or kids running around or whatever. And so really understanding what each individual needs, I think, is so important. Valderrama, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, just to complement one thing what Prita has said. We need to be disciplined during the pandemic, right? So as we talked about creating these spots of time for you, I learned the one thing. You can create a meeting called the block it. So do this proactively. When you start planning your agenda for the week, put blocks in your agenda, because when people will invite you, then you see that you have blocks in your agenda, but put this before your agenda is full, because once your agenda is full, there is no way out. So I learned the benefit of creating the word blocked at my agenda recently, and I am using that effectively.
I'm more brutal on that. My calendar says to my admin, respect my end of day. So she will not block she will not put anything at that point.
I think what Valderrama you mentioned is it really works. In my calendar as well, I have block. If not, you find, and especially in a global role, you find that your calendar gets filled up, especially as senior leaders. Yeah, so I have done the practice of putting blocks as well, so that people look for alternate time. Then the other thing that we have done as an organization to orchestrate the so-called pockets of time as a whole organization, what we have done is for a 30-minute meeting, we always start 5 minutes after, right? So it's, for example, it's at 3 o'clock meeting, you want to have it, we start at 3:05 and at 3:30. If it's a 1 hour meeting, we say the start time will be 10 minutes after. Right? And if it's more than 1 hour, 2-hour meeting, then it's 15 minutes. So it's consistently applied across the organization, so that in between meetings, you don't find yourself being involved in back-to-back meetings all the way. These are just small tweaks that we try to apply discipline across organizations, that everybody get a benefit.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, I think, and if you can do some breathing or mindfulness, or just look out of the window, or go for a short walk in those little breaks, use them as that recovery time.
And Brian, then maybe another minor point, but we didn't speak about us that have lost relatives or loved family members during pandemic, and for our employees as well, right? So I think this is another dimension of this pandemic. I don't know about the leaders here, but I have lost two family members recently, and to have to deal with this morning plus the work is something that is not easy. So my advice is be considerable with your team if they have losses, because you can't expect that a person has lost a family member and next day is performing well in the job. So be attentive to that and see if there are cases in the families of your team that you respect. I tried not to contact them for 1 week, of course, to give condolences, but not contact them at least in the period of 1 week to allow them to have some time for just go through the process of losing some family members.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Valorem. That's very awful. I'm sure our hearts will go out to you. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think obviously being aware of that and then allowing for the fact that those people will not be performing at their best, potentially for quite a long time. And also there's a lot of advice around dealing with grief, but talking about it can always be helpful. There's a tendency not to want to talk about it because you think they might get upset, but actually it can often be quite helpful. Take a steer from the individual involved. But maybe on a slightly lighter note, just to finish up, Kripa mentioned having the guys at home doing some of the cooking, which I think is wonderful. But Jack, what else do you think the men can learn? I mean, obviously their role at home is actually really important. It's actually quite a serious point. They do need to get off their backsides and do a little bit more of the domestic chores. But what else do you think men should be taking away from and learning from the experience of their female colleagues through this whole episode?
If I may, Brian,
yeah.
I've seen sorry,
ahead,
in
Julie.
many families, although the men were home, the female was still, in charge of all, family tasks, cooking, the kids, education, etc. So it's not really, I think, we've been dealing with so many serious issues that maybe the diversity aspect has somehow been relegated to the bottom of the priorities, and not only in the at home, but also in the organizations.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to make sure females remain in the pipeline in these difficult times when they are so overwhelmed by all the outside tasks they have to deal with, while advancing their career, bearing in mind that they're usually more discreet, and that we are in a remote environment. So I think as a leader, we have to put back diversity in the middle of the table and make sure we do not forget about that.
Yes, no, absolutely right. Jack, back to you.
Yeah, I was just going to add that some of the things I would like to see at home, for example, I would love to see the men stepping up to shoulder the responsibility. Even though, whether it's your wife, whether your mother, sister, or daughter may be perfectly capable and willing. I think it's what Julie, you've mentioned, automatically women assume most of this responsibility. But if you do offer that up, they will certainly appreciate the gesture a lot more than what you imagine, right? Think about how much more women can thrive and blossom and grow in a workplace with this kind of support, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
and in a workplace, I would love to see more male allies with whom we could have open discussions with, right? I have observed that some men still see DEI as a so-called a women issues. It's actually not, right? It would be great if you can see more men stepping up to, say, providing voices to their female colleagues, or even help to amplify them, right? and give that encouragement. This would be kind of things I would like to see more. Think about the kind of workplace that you would like your daughters or your wife or your partners to have, right? So this is what I would like to see.
Super. Yes, the role of ally is super important. But back to Mike. Thank you.
Thanks so much to our fantastic moderator and panelists for this session. Thank you.